everything's great, I think. So there you go. Hey, I'm Matt Payne, and I'm going to talk about command lines and how to make them more comfortable for yourself. Some tricks. Interruptions are welcome. Comments are welcome. Anytime you can chat in the Google Meet chat, or you can just shout it out. So command lines are hard. I've seen very, very smart people use the mouse to try and move around in their terminal. And, that's completely natural because terminals ought to work with mice. And I'm sure there's terminal programs that do. But since I remember when Linux came out, I don't expect it to work with the mouse. So one of the things that's hardest about command lines is there's not really a good sense of place. You can print your working directory with the pwd command whenever you want. You can see here I'm in this folder. And you can also cd to change your location. And there's this notion of path where absolute paths start with a /. And just to be difficult, Windows does it the other way. Linux does it the right way. And relative paths don't start with a /. There's a special directory. Dot is where you're at, the current directory, and ... is the parent. You can go up, 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 up until you hit the root, and then you can't go any higher. So arrow keys are your friend, in oops, that's too much. You can say up arrow, up arrow, up arrow, and it will show you various things that you've done before. So that's your friend. Another thing that's really nice is Control R, AWK, reverse search for the last time I did awk. Okay. Let's see what else we got. There's a history command that will actually list all of the commands that you've been doing recently. Oops. Look out. I'm out of control. Yeah, you just had to record it, Aaron. Just had to record it. So there's the commands that I've been doing recently from the history. All right. And then I like to remind people that there's this notion of result code, which you can print out with echo $? If a result code is 0, it means nothing went wrong and everything's good. If it's not 0, you can look it up in the manual to find out what went wrong if you really want to. So thank you for the shout out, Joseph, about the IT ops. I always heard good things about DTN. Some of the command line interface power tools that I want to call your attention to are listed here, and I'm going to go through them one at a time pretty quickly so Aaron has time for his good stuff. And if anybody wants to shout out. You can
slow down a little bit, man. It's all right.
Oh, I can slow down?
A little bit, you want to.
All right. Anyway. So redirection is your friend. You can send the output of a program to a file. So normally, if we do it like a W, you see who's logged in and what they're running. But if I do a W, like that, it just goes to a file. Notice I have my result code nice and 0, like everything's great. And if I want to look at what's inside of that file, I can see that it's just captured the output. Okay. I can append to a file with the double arrow, especially if I don't do any, there we go, like that. And now if I cat out the file, I see it twice. And there's a take things from the file. So if I say NL less than, that takes it and reads in from the file. NL is a utility to number the lines. How's that, Rob?
Yeah, that's better. I'm trying to reorient my screen, so I wasn't.
Okay. You're cool, man. I want everybody to be happy. You know me.
I know.
Yeah. So redirection's your friend. There you go. That's redirection. All right. And there is a way to redirect. There's this notion of standard out, standard in, and standard error. And standard out and standard error are separate so that it's easier to make sure the errors get noticed. And standard in has a numeric value of 0, standard out 1, standard error 2. So if you want to redirect standard error, it's 2 greater than. So there you go. You told me to slow down, Aaron. So pipes, redirection combines commands and files. Pipes combine commands. So what happens is in example 1 here, cat outputs the file. Cat is not related to dog. Nunya, that is a perfect tip, and I'm going to do it in just a second. So cat is not related to dog. It's related to concatenate because Linux is Unix, and Unix was invented in the 70s. It was a different time. They didn't have copy and paste. They had yank and put. They didn't have type. They had cat. So cat outputs a file name, and then this pipe, the vertical bar, sends it to this program NL that you saw a minute ago that simply numbers the lines, okay? And you can combine more than one pipe together. So you can take the lines that come from the file, and you can say, hey, I want to search for the lines that contain Aaron, and then output them numbering them. In the chat, Nunya has pointed out that it's really great to sometimes smush the standard error output, digit 2, together with standard out, which is digit 1. And he gives you the syntax for that. And so in the chat, you might say something like my program, and then you might say 2 and 1 combined together, my output dot text. So something like that would smush the standard error and standard out together. That's a very useful thing. I never memorize it. I just look it up every time. But there you go. So redirection, pipes, they're your friends. There's a lot of directories, a lot of folders, and being able to traverse them and search for things in them is very, very useful. The find command has a gazillion options, and the ones that I use and encourage my fellow developers to use all the time is the 2 that you see here. Just plain old find, and then the current directory, or you can put some other directory name in there like src, which is where Java people put their source code sometimes. And it'll print out all of the files and directories in there. And then from there, you can pipe it to grep and look for various things, and off you go. So cool. All right. So there's also Egrep, which is extended grep, and extended grep handles a form of regular expressions. And I respect the regular expressions, but this is how I usually will use Egrep. I'll say, hey, I want to find all the normal files, that is to say, skip the directories, and I want to pipe that output to extended grep, and I want to do a case-insensitive search. So capital J and capital K are the same as lowercase k and j. And I want to look for Java or KT because Kotlin is cool, or TS because TypeScript is cool. And since I'm going to be talking to somebody about this output, I want to put numbers on the lines. So I can say, hey, Rob, check out file number 3. I think that's the one we're looking for. Okay. And Dave Thacker, thank you for your comment in the chat. I really like the fact that I learned things at Linux Club all the time. I did not know that you could control the size of your history and increase it. That is huge. And I also did not know that egrep and grep are the same executable. It is a common thing in Linux, Unix, to change the name of the executable in order to have a different behavior. and that's because the executable can tell the name that you're calling it from. So like VI and view are frequently the same executable. And if you come into it as view, then you're in read-only mode. And if you come into it as VI, then you're in regular editor mode. Thank you very much, Dave and Chad. And yeah, BusyBox is a thing that sometimes you'll see in embedded systems as well, where literally a dozen or two executables all go to the same file. All right, since we're all, a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of us are using grep these days, I want to point out this thing that Matt Heller taught me a few years ago, that there's a command git space grep. It's just like grep, except it does a couple of extra things. It automatically recurses through the directory, so you don't have to combine it with find. And it only searches things that are under the control of Git. So if you're in a Git repository, git grep is the thing. It's amazing. It's really, really nice. So, okay. And xargs, I sort of think of it as flipping, where you've got a command and you normally put arguments one after the other on the command. But if you want those arguments to instead come from standard in, you can use xargs to make that happen. The thing that I've used a lot in my work life is a script kind of like this for killing a runaway process. So I'll do a PSEF to see all the processes, and then I'll grep for the name of my runaway executable. And then I use this little program that I really want to sell you on. My call to action for tonight, other than enjoy the command line and have fun, is to go Google and learn awk. Awk is like what, a 50-page book, and there's free websites that'll teach you awk. And it's this little tiny programming language that is the grandfather of Perl and Python and Ruby and all those people. So awk says, hey, on every single line, I want you to run this tiny little program. So awk reads a line of text, runs this print $2, then it reads another line of text and runs print $2, then another line of text and runs print $2, and over and over and over again, awk will go. And so if we were to do the, oh no, I hate it when I do that. If we do the PS and we do the PSEF, see how I've got this second column here? If I want to just isolate that, I can say print $2, which is the second column, and I have just that column. $1 is the first column, and $0 is the whole darn line. So that's awk for you. And I wish I knew a way in Markdown Presenter on the terminal to skip to a particular place. So PSEF lists all the processes. Grep runaway says only give me the lines that are relevant to the runaway process that's having lots and lots of processes of it. Isolate the second column, which is the process ID, and then take all of those process IDs and use xargs to send it to the kill utility to terminate those runaway processes. Now, as a matter of trivia, this particular command that's on the screen right now is a very polite command because it's not saying kill-9. Kill-9, 9 is it sig kill, Aaron and Rob? Is that right? I bet it is sig kill. Yep. Anyway, kill-9 generally can't be ignored. Kill without it is a polite, excuse me, Mr. Runaway Process, would you please terminate yourself? But a kill-9 will kill it dead. All right, so that's an example of xargs and a bunch of pipes and a teaser trailer for awk. So I am not a heavy-duty bash scripter. You know, the most bash that I ever write is what you see here on the screen, where I'll take the find utility that we've been talking about, and I'll combine it with grep to look for some things. And then I'll take the result of that and I'll loop over them. So here, F is one line of the output. So the back ticks, there's a better way that'll pass your linters better, but this is the way that's been working since the 1970s. Is backtick says run the command and put the output in its place. Single ticks say take this verbatim. Double quotes say allow for variable expansion or variable interpolation. So I'll typically write this in the shell and I'll leave off the action and just start with an echo and then come back and edit it and put the action in. So this says, hey, all of the files that have either something or other things somewhere in their name in a case insensitive way, I want you to echo the file and then I want you to copy it to someplace else. So I have never nested the $% signs, Dan. I think that's a fantastic trick. Thank you. So, and I agree. I'm trying to break my backticks habit and use $ command instead, like Dan says. Thank you very much. All right. So job control is a very nice thing for people who are like, oh yeah, one more thing. I know that the $% sign Nunya is considered safer and newer, but beyond that, I'm not quite sure why it's better than old school backticks. Dan or Aaron, do you want to chime in with why it's better?
I think it's just because it stands out more. It's more, you're less likely to put the wrong tick in there.
Yep.
Mix it up.
You can also stack $paren commands, and you can add in quotes where you have no need to really escape them.
So there you go, Nunya. And before today, I didn't know that you could stack or nest $paren commands. So I'm gonna try to use that because Linux is easy, and I like showing off how easy it is.
Yeah, let me know what was wrong.
Okay. So Control Z is a really nice thing, especially when you're in an editor, but I suspect that it will also work in Markdown Presenter. I can do a Control Z and see how it says suspended Markdown Presenter mattgpain.markdown. And then if I say jobs, it'll list the jobs, okay? And I can say VI MGP Markdown Presenter. And I can do another Control Z and it suspends that. And now there are 2 jobs, okay? I can say foreground %2 and bring the VI session back. And now it says it continued it. If I say jobs, because I exited VI, I'm out of that. And I can say FG and it will default to 1, or I can say FG %1. So Control Z, do something, FG, very handy. Not the biggest thing these days since we have multiple Windows and terminal programs and tmux, but back in the day when we had one terminal, Control Z was a power move. All right, environment variables are really, really nice. They're like global variables that your children can't change. So when you run a command, it starts a child process. And if a child process, it gets all those environment variables. And if it changes one of those environment variables, that change can't affect the parent. So, I'm not a parent, but Rob, if one of your kids went hog wild with their credit card, would it hit your credit rating? No, it would not. It would be on them. So there you go. Environment variables, very, very handy. Sorry, I don't have more to elucidate. Sed goes along with awk. I'm not a big sed person. This right here is the most sed that I will ever use, where I'm taking some file and I'm piping it to sed, and I'm going to edit. I'm not sure what E stands for. And I'm going to run a substitution, changing mat into mat pane. And I'm going to do it no matter how many times it occurs on the lines. Thank you. E is for execute. And you can execute, I assume you can execute multiple of these. And some people get very, very fancy with their set. Thank you, Chad. Very, very fancy with their sed scripts. I'm not a huge setter. This is all the sed that I need right now. And Nunya, you're absolutely right. G is for global. So without the G, it will only change the first mat on the line to map pane and would leave all the rest the same. Okay. So awk, I think, is much more handy, at least from my point of view. And here's an actual awk command ripped from the Slack chat. I'm not going to say whose Slack chat. So somebody that you might know had a giant pile of XML files, and these were the output of a giant pile of unit tests. And they wanted to find out, hey, where is the problem? And so they literally looked for the start of the XML tag test suite in all of the files. And then that was a really, really long line, like huge long, much more than 132 characters. So trimmed it down with a quick awk script that, remember how we looked at awk and $2 was the second column and $1 was the first column, where you can do that with variables. And NF is a free global number of fields that you get in awk. So what this says is it says, hey, Bird, it's good to see you, man. This says, hey, look, I want to print the last field and then the next to the last field and the next to the last field, and then finally one more. And I'm going to use C programming style substitution, where this first %s corresponds to this first parameter, the second %s corresponds to the second one, and so on. And this allowed me to spot that I did indeed have an error and everything was great. And then after this, I reran it and I did a grep for errors equals 1 and out popped the name of the file that corresponds to the unit test. So it's a real world example of writing a quick awk script to solve a problem. What can I tell you? All right. So a very classic thing to do with awk is to write a word frequency bit that's going to tell you use the word the 20 times and the word awesome 5 times and so on. And so if we take some Jeffsome, which is an amazing website that Chad showed me, thank you, Chad, to get some random chatter, and we cat that into awk, we can have a thing that runs on every single line that actually builds up this associative array. In other languages, they would call these a hash or a map, but awk calls them associative arrays, where you can index with the word itself. So the and $1 is the first word in the line, $2 is the second word of the line, and so on. So we go through every single word in the line, the number of fields, NF, and we increment that corresponding thing in the associative array. And since awk is awesome and very convenient, if it doesn't exist in the associative array, it defaults to 0 for you, because, you know, the boys at AT&T, Bell Labs, they got your back. And it just increments it, and off you go. And then there's a special little hunk of code that only runs when the end of input is hit, which is what this END symbol is. And this is just going to loop over all of the items I inside of the associative array W, and it's going to tell you, hey, look, I, which is a word like the or Frank or awesome, happens a particular number of times. It'll give you a little report. So writing a word frequency counter in different languages, it's a fun sport. You should try it. Believe it or not, JavaScript is pretty fun. Anyway, there you go. So that's another taste of awk as it was. And here's some references for the slides. I encourage you to send pull requests to any of these slides, particularly the references. And some miscellaneous tricks that I really find very, very helpful. I talked a little bit about environment variables. I like to make a environment variable called A, where A is just the destination, because then later I can go somewhere and I can say copy file space $A, and it'll put it in that directory way over there. And that's very, very handy. And like we talked about earlier, it's better to use $paren. And someday I'll actually remember that. So Java people, and I'm a Java person, they really like deep directory trees. And you can make a deep directory tree very quickly like this. So here it's making 2 folders that are both subdirectories of deep. And so this would make quite a few folders right here if we were to do this. So like, because I'm curious, I want to give it a try. So try it right now, see how that works. And then I'm going to say find sum, and there's lots of stuff. And I'm going to count the number of things. There's 21 folders that made, just like that. Boom. Amuska, I'm glad you like JavaScript. I love JavaScript. I pay the mortgage with JavaScript. All right. CDE is really nice, and it also works with Git branches. So I can say, if you're in a Git shop, you can say git checkout dash. It goes back to the branch that you were on before. You could say git checkout dash again and toggle back and forth. So that's really, really nice. A typical use might be I'm on develop, and then I say git checkout my branch, and then I want to go back to develop really quick. So I'll git checkout dash, only spell it right. And now I'm on develop one last time, git checkout dash. Now I'm back to my branch. And that works with folders too. All right. There's this whole idea of sourcing a script versus running it. And you want to do that when the script is affecting some environment variables. Because remember, environment variables that are changed in a child process don't affect you. And environment variables are a big deal. Like path is something that we see frequently, where it's a list of directories. And when you say cool command, it checks to see if cool command is in the first directory in the path. So if I say, if I say echo path, it would first, cool command, it would first check to see if it's in this folder right here, and the directories are separated with colons, and then it would check in the second folder and so on. So environment variables are definitely your friend, and there's a gazillion of them. Let's see, that's it. That's all my slides. I really appreciate all the interaction and everything. Aaron, do you want me to run your deck, or do you want to run your deck?
You want to run my deck, it's fine.
I'm happy to serve.
So while you load it up, let's talk a little about some of the history of how this began. We're going way back to back when Matt and I both had all our hair, which was really good times. I miss those days a lot.
Me too.
But back in the 70s and stuff, when Unix came out, there was a couple books written by Koenig and Pike called Software Tools. And the core concept was they took all these little bits and pieces and they just changed it together into this unholy abomination. Because one of the big reasons for Unix to exist was something called trough. What's that one?
It's a book called Software Tools.
Tools. That is not planned. That is just a coincidence. But the core concept was, how can we generate documentation? How can we do this stuff manual, all this kind of stuff? And they built these tools that would put things through this tool to that tool to another tool, and then run it through word count. They do all these utilities on it. They would just get all this information from it. And by chaining it together with pipes and minuses and all this stuff, they could create incredibly complicated programs with just taking little bits and building blocks. Just a phenomenal concept. And we're still there today. But today we're also getting some other new stuff. Like in the last year and a half, I've learned some stuff about the shell that I had never dug into before, fortunately, thanks to the place I work at. I mean, some of the stuff we're doing with tools like GoPass and DuryMV and Starship, it is phenomenally nice. It is amazing how much it is. You create a directory, you set DuryMV, you have all your stuff located there. It does all your stuff there. It has it all there. You do talks, you do the basic commits, pre-commit checks. It does all this stuff for you. It helps you write better code, and it's just phenomenal. At this point, we're talking 50 years later, we're still making progress. And the thing is, the shell is a tremendous thing because you learn one little thing, it can impact you a great deal over time. So that's my introduction to complement Matt. So let's go ahead and start through the slides. Time. I've written the time function to time stuff running inside Bash at least 40 times over the years. And then a couple umpteen releases of Bash ago, they put a time command in there, and that's all you got to do now. Is just time, then the commands you want it to run inside that, and it just gives you the response. So this, what it does is it sleeps for 3 seconds. It just gives you the real time, the user time, the system time. The real time, of course, is all the time that it actually, because it's waiting. User, it takes next to nothing. Assist, it's just asleep, so it's all pretty good. Want to hit the next one? One of the great things about Bash is you'll end up with a script that somebody else wrote that you have to figure out what the heck it's doing. You will have no clue what it's doing at all. And that's when the magic of Bash minus X will come into your life, and you will go, oh man, I don't know what I would do without that. So here's a little example. We have a file called a.sh, which has the following contents, just echo a, then time. Well, actually, I got it echoing high. I did match up the input to output, so it's all good. But if you run it normally, you just see the output as follows. It would be a, then the real time, and that's all you get. If you hit the next slide, you run with -X, it shows you the lines as they're executing. So the first thing it does is it does echo high, hey, high, sleep 3. When you've got a big complicated program and you're trying to figure out what it's doing, you have 2 options. You can start putting echoes everywhere, which that way lies madness. And the greatest thing about it of all is echoes can change the behavior of a program. It can really mess with you a lot. Want to hit the next slide?
And -X will also terminate the script as soon as there's an error.
Yes, it will. There's another option that Matt referred to as well, the -E option, which if you do that, anytime it doesn't capture an error, return and stuff, like if it's trying to do something, it'll error at that as well. There was actually a really cool thing just today on setting up getting a stack trace from your Bash shell script, and we'll take a look at that when we get done with this. But it's some phenomenal stuff still going on to this day. Bash is phenomenal, but -X, you'll be, if you need it, if you've got a Bash shell script, you're not sure what it's doing, it is a tremendous lifesaver. Next one, Matt. Shell check, lint for Bash. Lint goes way, way, way back. The core concept was that after pocket lint, it's going to help you figure out certain stuff that's wrong with your programs and give you ideas of what's going on. Shell check's the one that we use at my place of work, and it is a lifesaver sometimes. Sometimes it is also a major pain in the butt. It has a couple hundred different checks it does. Example being SC1040. When using minus, you can less than, you can only indent with tabs. That will bite you. I guarantee you, it'll bite you, especially if you cut and paste and it replaces your tabs with spaces. You'll see somebody have stuff with redirection. You'll be like, why isn't that working? And you will be confused until you set list in there and figure that out. Or if you run shell check against it. 1081, scripts are case sensitive. Use lowercase if, not uppercase if. The great thing about that is some versions of Bash will let that go by. Other ones won't, so you never have a consistent behavior between how old you're going on. I think NetBSD, this one's actually bit me in the past because I think it allowed uppercase if, and it just, I could not figure out why it wasn't working on Linux Bash. I tried it on that. Another one is 1086. Don't use the $sign and iterator name in for loops. I've done it. Matt's done it. I'm sure we've all done it. Dan, I'm sure you've done it. Dave, Chad, I know Chad's done it. He won't admit it. Maybe he hasn't, but all of us have done it sometime in the past. But never. All right. But they can help you out when you've got a subtle bug, because it's going to give you, between that and -X, that's going to give you an idea of what it's doing, how it's going, all that kind of stuff. And that's really what you want. And if you make it a part of your build process, you can actually have it do certain fix-ups of the program, like take off trailing spaces, all that kind of stuff. It is a bit of a learning curve, but overall it is definitely worth the effort and stuff like that it's going to do for you, especially as we get closer to everyone working in a continuous integration, continuous development shop with Jenkins and stuff like that. Next slide. This section I called Use This, Not That. One of the things about Unix, like Matt and I were talking about, and everyone's also aware, Unix goes back over 50 years now. It goes back around the time, if you go back to BCPL and stuff, it goes back before the moon landings. That gives you an idea how far we're talking back. So it's amazing how much some of these tools just continue on, even though there's better stuff coming along. Go ahead, hit the first one. Hit the next line. Sorry. One of them is too long, didn't read instead of man. It's the modern replacement for man. Each piece of documentation is pretty short. One thing to do is make sure you do a too long, didn't read -u updates and download the latest version of the pages. If you do a too long, didn't read for Vim or wget, it will just give you a very short. You want to go ahead and pop out? And just, you don't have TLDR installed. Never mind. But it just gives you like a one-page description. It's really kind of nice in that respect. So works pretty well.
You can just use curl.
Yeah, you can use curl with cheat.sh and stuff like that. A lot of people do that one as well. We have that later on, this stuff, but that's definitely a good thing. Yeah. One nice thing about the too long didn't read is you can actually have it locally and stuff. So if you have a bad network connection and stuff. I hope I didn't scare Raul.
No, you're fine.
Oh, he'll probably be back. Yeah, but it's just a nice little utility. It's just a different way of doing it. Instead of reading like, because the average man page is what, 6-7 pages long, and most of it is not stuff you actually need. So it's only got so much. Oh, he's back. Good. Go ahead to the next one. IP is the replacement for ifconfig. If you're on a machine and you don't have ifconfig, you can install NetTools on almost everyone, and it'll come along. One of the reasons to move to IP instead of netconfig is because a lot of distros aren't including anymore, especially if you're dealing with Docker containers. Not being able to have the tools that you want in a consistent manner, it can be a pain. So it's just better to move on and just kind of accept this the future. So here's a couple IP commands. IP-4A will show an IPv4 address. IP-6A will show the IPv6 address because, I think 2023 is going to be the year IPv6 really takes off. IPR shows the routes on the system. IPA show and the network interface. It will show the stats for the network interface. IP-link is up. IP-link ls up shows the active interfaces. All pretty good commands, and they're not that hard once you get used to them, but it is about muscle memory. In my case, I still type ifconfig all the time. I'm trying to, but it's me fighting against 20 some odd years of experience typing this command. And I mean, I've been typing that command since Solaris whatever, so it's really hard to let go of it. So go ahead and hit the next one. But here's a couple of how to modify an interface. One nice thing about it is you can do it either with the regular 255.255.0 notation, or you can do sitter as well, which is a very nice feature that's new in the day. IP color brief. Good. Thank you, Tommy. You can delete interfaces. Pretty straightforward. IP space A del the IP address dev eth0. You can flush addresses from interface if you need to reestablish. It's just a different way of doing it, but I would say it's roughly comparable. I mean, in some respects, the output's shorter and a little less verbose, which is kind of nice, but still. But it's available on every system because years and years ago, I went out to Vandenberg Air Force Base, and I'm stuck in a Solaris box, and I at the time only used Emacs. I then sat down in front of this terminal, had to do a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, "Hey, where's Emacs?" And they're like, "Oh, we don't have Emacs." There's nothing better than when a captain sitting behind you typing man space VI, starting to figure out how to use VI during the process. So it's nice to use the common denominator tools that are going to be available for you. So that was the last time I really used Emacs because I loved Emacs. I had macros and I had all sorts of stuff with me, but I was not going to be able to explain to this captain, what was it, Colonel? I can't remember what he was, but I was not going to explain to him, hey, I need to go out and grab the GCC tools, grab this, and between 2 to 3 days, I will be at the point where I'm productive again. So it was a valuable lesson that I wish I had known before I went there. But know the IP basics, and just you're going to have to accept them sooner or later. So want to hit the next one? Oops. And bringing the interface up and down, adding default routes. Routes actually are a little easier in the terminology of this one. I like that. It's kind of nice. And I think that's it for this for the IP stuff. Want to hit the next one, Matt? So the other one that is outdated now is netstat. SS is the replacement for netstat. From the man page, you want to display all the TCP sockets, SS minus T minus A, pretty straightforward. SS minus U space minus A is to display all the UDP sockets. You also have the option to show with the SE Linux security context. If you ever end up in a situation where you're really working for a company that really is into SE Linux and has everything actually labeled and stuff, that can be a godsend for you. But hopefully you're not in a company that's that insane with their SE Linux policies, because some of that is a bit nuts. But what I really do like is the SS-O state established, then the port SSH. So that'll show all the established SSH connections for you. Pretty straightforward. It's not too bad. You can also do the same thing with netstat, but it's a little wordier, but I just like that one. It seems pretty good. Makes a good case for it. And SS will be on about every station you have, every Linux box you have nowadays. So it's something to get used to. Want to flip the next one? This one violates my rule. I was just telling you how you should only use the tools that are installed in the system. FD is a replacement for find. It has an easier syntax. If example being you want to find messages, the message file and messages files in the var log is FD messages var log. It'll find all the variations of it. It does all the globbing and stuff, so it works out for you there. So you have to do that as opposed to var log name messages and stuff. So it is a nicer syntax, and if it's someone new doing it, it can be useful stuff. People say it's also faster, but I have not seen that much difference in the majority of the speed tests I've run so far. But next slide, Matt. Here's an example of how to VI all the files that match a pattern in the current directory. FD MD space minus XVI, which is a little easier than the other option. Find well, period should be in there. Minus name, single quote, star MD star, single quote, minus exec VI, curly braces, curly bracket, then backslash and semicolon. That's, I mean, I type that command literally, a variation of that command 5 to 10 times a day at least. I am always looking for something. That is one of the ones I use. I also usually use it with XRs later on, which we'll go into a little more. Oops. How to do an ls-l for all the files in the folder. It's all good, man. FD space minus H minus L. Minus H, you have to put that in there explicitly because FD by default does not show hidden files, which is either a great thing or a bad thing. I haven't decided which yet. If you spend a lot of time in systems that have like Git repos and stuff installed on it, not seeing that by default can be a tremendously nice time-saving feature, but other times you're like, why don't you behave just like find? But then again, why don't you just use find then? That is the find equivalent of it. Also, the period got whacked by the markdown stuff. But yeah, so it just gives you an idea. So, how it's a shorter command. There's some other people written some other equivalents to FD and find as find equivalents as well, but this one seems to be the one that's got the most popular. I haven't seen it shipped with a lot of distros yet, but it's available for most of them. Not necessarily the repos. This one actually I had to go out for Debian to actually go out and grab the Debian package, install it for my testing, but it's not too bad. So next slide, Matt. Yeah, you can do the globbing regular expressions, and that's I just already read that slide last slide. So go ahead, flip on. A friend of mine uses this all the time instead of find XR's grep. Yep, definitely right. The average day, this is the one I really do type a lot. Find period minus type F minus print 0, pipe character XR space minus 0, grep minus I value. Matt and I were going over the slides the other night. He asked why the print 0 and the XR is minus 0. And that will actually tell find to use new lines to separate the arguments differently, so it'll actually escape spaces and stuff. So if you have like Mac, which has like file names, so then like this, that, and spaces, all that kind of stuff, it'll actually handle that correctly. Because if not, that is a major pain in the butt, because it will come back like, oh, I'm only doing the first up until the first space. So it's very interesting. But one option you can use for that is you can just have a look for a value recursively, grep minus r value. And that will go through that directory and everything underneath it and just find it. And it's pretty lickety split. One nice thing about doing the grep-r is you're only creating one process at the time. Meanwhile, the other one above that, xargs-o grep, is creating one every time it finds information. So you're going through a whole lot of PIDs, which on today's machines don't make any difference. But if you're one of those people who just wants that little bit extra, it can make a difference. But grep-r is a really useful tool. Grep can do about everything. It's become one of those tools that's got so much stuff added to it over the years that it is almost an OS in its own right at this point. You want to hit the next slide, Matt? Cheat.sh, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. It's a really fun little one. Pike, I think he accepted at a certain point that he had no choice about it before he passed. Xargs does have limits as well, but they're much higher than they are for like the regular command line limits and stuff like that. One thing to go out and look for is something called bash insulter. And bash insulter will, every time you type a command wrong, will give you an insult like nice try Einstein, hey Ace, grind me a pound, and variations like that. Yes, Tony, what you got?
I was just wondering if Xargs was around when find did not have the exec. Is that why we needed Xargs? Because find did not have exec? Because now it seems like you can eliminate a lot of Xargs and just use exec and execute commands that way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We can do that.
So is that the history? Is that we didn't have that in find in the beginning, or?
I don't believe it was there initially. But Xargs also has some benefits because you can theoretically, if you want to, you can dump it once you generate the commands out. Instead of dumping it to Xargs, you can also dump it to GNU Parallel, and it'll run in multiple processes. I don't know if you've done that at all in the past.
No.
One other advantage you can do with the Xargs is you can say that the command you run, you can take like 5 of the next file names that find might give it. So it'd do a ls and give it file numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next time it runs ls, it would be files 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Which I don't know how you do that. Would you say dash find or a find and a dash exec?
Huh.
Well, what I like about it is that you use, instead of using the semicolon, you can use plus, and then it does like the whole. It puts a bunch of it'll put a bunch of files on one command, and it'll parse out to however many commands you need instead of doing each file name on a separate command line.
Yeah. That's the great thing about Linux and Unix and the whole deal is there's a million different ways to do things. And everybody gets their own. The thing is, whoever it has to be your mentor is the person who you get a lot of your ideas from, and you tend to ape their code a whole lot throughout the whole rest of your time. It's like, fortunately, Matt and I had one of our mentors was Stan Wildman, who was a wickedly smart individual. And he, I mean, sometimes I still do things and I think, oh, that is the way Stan would do it. And also, I mean, there's stuff that I learned from Matt as well over the years, like pronouncing it chamad instead of however I used to pronounce it. And I don't know what that was now. But that's the great thing about it. But experiment with it, try a different variation of it, and maybe you'll find a better way to do it. Definitely, that's a possibility. So, cool. Future things. This is kind of cool. I just wanted to bring this up as well. The majority of the utilities that a lot of us use, the daily command stuff, is in something called GNU Core Utils. That's find. I mean, a whole bunch of the utilities are all in there. Find ls, all that kind of stuff are written in there. They're currently rewriting the GNU Core Utilities in Rust. They're doing that partially for their own operating system called Redux, which is a cool thing. But it's also very cool because people are actually looking at these old tools, which we have pretty much accepted as being like written in stone, that they'll never ever change. But they're actually, people are looking at them again saying, is there a better way to do this internally? Because think about it, if we were to improve performance of fine by 5%, what a change in the world that would make for some of us. It would save me probably a couple minutes a week. But it's just interesting to see that they're actually looking at something we accepted as established and stuff, and they're giving it a new spin. It's getting reevaluated. It's just coming down to being an interesting thing, because it's like over time, I'm sure there's probably some guys working on Go as well, Dave. But Rust is a very popular memory-safe language, and some people love it. I mean, there's people who love every language. Yes, Rust does have a very good security stance. Rust actually has made it into, is theoretically in the kernel for Linux device drivers as well now. They're hoping more and more of them will be written in that. Because if you ever had your machine lock up because of an NVIDIA problem, stuff like that, because something wasn't caught or something, or some video card or device, that is some potential stuff that's going to be interesting to see how Rust evolves over time. But it's just a cool thing. It's an interesting project. If you want to see a little different way of things being done, it's definitely worthwhile to take a look at. So that's what I got for that slide, Matt. Another resource I got from a friend at work, Chad, is pretty much for anything you want to find, Google Bash, awesome, GitHub, or just Google for those, whatever you want, awesome, then GitHub, and you'll find a bunch of curated lists for it and stuff like that. It's some really good stuff. Hey, Matt, you want to open a window?
Sure. Terminal or web browser?
Web browser.
All right, coming right up. So,
oh my God, I didn't realize Rob was still around.
So you could even Google awesome Java GitHub, and you'd have things. That's amazing.
Really.
Yeah.
Let's do
All right,
that.
here we go. Nice window.
Unfortunately, we've lost some of the other people over the last couple of years from Bell Labs. I do feel bad about Mr. Pike, because I'm a fan of his stuff. He wrote a book on the practice of programming a couple of years ago, which was really a nice little book. Just hit the first one. That'd be good.
Sure.
Curated list of delightful Bash scripts and resources. And scroll down. The Bash Hackers Wiki. That's actually a really good one, just in its own right. But it's just a human readable guide to information about Bash. And it's just phenomenal amount of stuff can happen in there. But it's a great resource. Just hit a couple of the links and stuff. I mean, hit a couple of the sites and stuff like that. What's the other one that's like Google shells? Yeah. Oh, yes. Globbing. But there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, one of the most important things that I think you learn over time is how to write better Google queries and stuff like that.
You can do it, Dave. You can write bugs in anything. That's good.
Yeah. I don't think you could in fourth, but that's a whole nother talk. But there was a reference, Matt and I were going over the slides the other day. We came across one that was like, what was the name of that? It was like robust Bash program. It's how to do, how to lock your stuff down so it had less errors, and how to make it more, it was like in the third one or whatever. But it's, no, it's on the different page, Matt. But but there's all sorts of information there, because Bash runs a lot of stuff. Ooh. Yeah, Kernighan, and the reason Awk is Aho Weinberg, I believe in Kernighan, because it's named after the authors of it, which it's really nice. You can find your names that work out that well on it. But yeah, Kernighan, Richie, and all those guys. I used to have two goldfish named Kernighan and Richie. And I got two other goldfish, Arc C and Arc B. But that is cool. But Awk and stuff like that, it's just amazing how much you can still do with that stuff when we're talking 40 years ago. One of the things that's happened over time is GNU would always add the capability to almost all the utilities to read mail over time. So even their Hello World example could read mail. We like Bash because it is everywhere, yes. And there have been places I've known that have lived and died by the K shell, the C shell, the ZSH, and TCSH, the tickle command shell. And they all do well. But when you're going to a site, you want to be able to make it work. Because the example being Oracle used to require KSH on Linux, which in that case was based on this subset called PDKSH, which is a really stripped down version of the Corn shell, but goes around. Want to go back to the slides, Matt?
Yeah.
Be so kind. So I think we just got a couple left.
Yeah. So we were here, and you want the next slide?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So 6 tips that help you throughout your whole, hopefully your whole bash career. -X is your friend. Knowing what it's doing. One of the most important things you have to figure out is how to get the machine to tell you what it's doing. That is really, really important. Be fearless. Unless you've got an RM in your script, then be very, very scared. You will screw up. There will be errors. There will be mistakes. But that's how you learn a lot of stuff. You learn a lot about what you're doing wrong that way, or a fork bomb, yes. We were talking about Dave's Garage at the beginning, and there's like 11 characters that will cause a fork bomb on most systems, but will still have some horrible impact on it. The command line is a very efficient way to do things. It's repeatable. It's scalable. It lets you do a lot of things in a very automated factor. One of the ways you can tell that is over the years, what has been the biggest change to Windows Server in probably the last 15 years? I would say it's been PowerShell, because they've gotten to the point now you can do almost everything, like configure Exchange, all that stuff from a command line. Why have they done that? Because they want it to be able to be a repeatable process. It can be done, written down in a book, be short, not be click, click here, click, click there, all that kind of stuff. Because even today in modern Windows systems, you can actually, on the server side, uninstall the GUI and still be able to configure everything with it. So it's a valid thing. PowerShell runs on Linux now. That is a weird thing that's happening. They're actually trying to merge more and more bash pieces into it. It's going to be interesting to see how all that stuff shakes out over time. And the most important thing, have fun. You'll learn stuff. And keep in mind, there's people who've done things like Sokoban and said. There's people who do almost anything in any language. There's a guy who wrote a whole lightweight version of the old adventure program. He wrote that in ED, I think, or something. But there's people out there who just have the time and just go nuts on stuff. So it's an amazing thing. I mean, take a shot at stuff. I mean, it's one of the things about it. If you screw it up, unless you got an RM in there, you're more likely you're going to be okay. So that's what I got. And Matt and Scott, and I think we got one slide left, don't we? The GitHub repo for this talk. Please check it out, fork it, add stuff to it, throw it back to us. By all means, if you want to take some of the ideas from this and use them, highly recommended. PowerShell has a lot of power. I'm trying not to, I didn't even think about that before I said that. But PowerShell has a lot of capabilities to it. And it's kind of interesting. I've got an Ubuntu box right now. I have the Microsoft. I have 3 major tools I use on it. Microsoft Edge, VS Code, and I've been installed PowerShell and I've been playing with that. So that goes back to being how you can have kind of a hybrid type system. It is object-oriented. Yes, it's very nice in that respect. Anybody got any questions? We got some time.
So I'm only seeing the slides from the first talk, and I'll see the ones from this one.
You
Oh.
want to see the slides from the first talk, is what you said?
Yeah, from Matt's talk, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not seeing it from...
Are you not seeing it in the GitHub?
Yeah, in the GitHub.
Oh.
Well, I'm very confused.
You might have still checked out under your branch. I thought I got them, though. I didn't get them.
No, so I don't have. I'm gonna share a browser window since I don't have a text browser. So hard, so terrible. I'm real sorry for the trouble about that, and I think we can clear it up pretty quick. So let's see here. Okay, so
there's intro stuff, and there's
like.
Oh, wait a minute.
So you want to go to AVM?
Oh, here it is. Yeah, I did find it.
Oh, okay. Good.
Excellent.
feel free to pull requests and all that stuff. Aaron talked me down from a straight up copyright, convinced me that we weren't going to make $1 billion. We should open source it. So
we can just put in what Creative Commons by this attribution.
Joseph, the Discord invite that I sent a little earlier, that should work for anyone with the URL. And there's the Discord invite. So the Discord is always quiet whenever I use it. So come talk to us.
And if you have any problems, give me a note over on the mailing list.
Thanks, Dave.
Who said that?
So cool.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to end the recording and we can do our just sit around and talk if you want to.
I got one last tip though. Is
good.
I got you get halfway through a command line and maybe it's a real long command line, and you have to go back to somewhere else. You don't want to run it. You don't want to risk running it because maybe you're worried you delete files or something. I'd say the thing that if you press escape and the pound key, that automatically comments out the line you're currently typing on. So you can save where you're at. Well, maybe you need to test out part of the sub part of the command.
That's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, you can set your key bindings for your bash shell to actually let you do things like use VI type commands and stuff like CW for change word and stuff. I haven't done it in ages because I just kept forgetting to do it consistently. And you don't do it consistently, you usually stop doing it. It's my experience.
Cool.
Anybody else got anything else they want on the record?
Nope.
Okay.
All right. So let's see. I think I've stopped recording. Have I really?